questions. Do we have any questions? Yes.
Last semester I did a research project comparing the relationship between world hunger and global meat consumption. And I'm kind of wondering if any of you have an opinion on that, and whether maybe reducing the amount of meat in our diet can help us live more self-sustainable, healthy lives.
Excellent question.
I would say ecologically, it partly depends where the meat came from. Getting back to sustainable systems mimic the natural ecology. Traditionally, that is through most of our ancestors' history, through anywhere in the world, cows and chickens and pigs or whatever, they ate grass in the field or scraps of food or something. And in a lot of places where we have arid conditions, that's still very sustainable. The factory farming is a completely different question, and all the fast food chains that import a lot of the beef from huge ranches in Latin America is a totally different question. So I don't think it's a simple question of vegetarianism versus non-vegetarianism. Americans right now, folks, we eat way more meat than our ancestors did, so we can cut back, all right? It's not a question of vegetarian, non-vegetarian. We all could eat a lot less meat. You all look pretty healthy. You got enough protein on your bodies already, so.
Does Mencken?
Yeah, just to add, I hope you have found out from your research that meat production is very expensive. You produce about 7 kg of corn to produce 1 kg of meat. The difference is very, very wide, and the more the consumption diverted to meat, the less the food that the other people would get. So that is the gap that we are really in need to look into. But the question is, how would we really change the culture? That's really the real issue. Not only in the Western countries, but even in the Southern countries, that trend is really changing from time to time. People are tending to divert more to eat meat more than crops and vegetables.
Good. Do we have time for one more question, Dave? Another question? Or comment? Danny?
Where would you say the whole issue of food security is in development circles right now? Has it risen to a point where it's become a priority, or is it still sitting pretty low in terms of priorities within the development circles?
I would say food security issue is a real priority. We have been talking about food crisis in 2008, where more than 1 billion, 1 million?
I think
100 million, yeah. People have been, have had food shortage around the globe. And this was a real issue. And MDG plan has raised this food security issue as a main component that we really look into. It is very important to look into a long-term type of, food maintenance within the community, especially in the areas where food shortage is so rampant and recurrent. We need to look into that very much. So it is generally, I could say, it is a real and prioritized type of development program. And all NGOs are talking about food security and food security. The issue is the strategy. How should we go about attaining food security? That's really the challenge. We may plan for small things, but those small things would not get us to food security level.
I would say there's a tension, and one is what's going on in NGO circles and some government circles. Simultaneously, in a type of schizophrenia, we've tied our hands with some of the trade agreements that are being made. Many people are very concerned about the degree to which genotypes and varieties are being patented. That's a whole issue that you alluded to. I was really glad to hear that, the issue of not only ownership of the land, I guess you did, not only ownership of the land, but ownership of the seeds, and the issue of the amount of land being set aside to biofuel is alarming. There's talk this year of a bipartisan effort in the U.S. that perhaps as much as a third of our corn will now go to fuel. And I would say, folks, we need better public transit. Okay, so and you all need to turn off your lights and turn off those little power strips when you're not in the home. And there's just a ton of things we could do like that before we turn a third of our corn into gasohol.
Very good. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time now. I would urge you to approach any one of the panelists if you have further questions and want to engage in further discussion. I'd like to thank David King, our provost, for his vision, as he said, for coupling this with the previous presentation on food at the table. I also want to thank Dr. Sharon Granby-Sobukwe, who worked with David to put this together. And above all, I'd like to thank our panelists. Thank you so much. Will you join me in thanking them for their results?